Hello, everybody. Welcome into Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today, we have a super exciting show. It is my job to take you right up to the MLB trade deadline. The MLB trade deadline ends at the same time as our show. So throughout our show today, we will be getting, I'm sure, lots of breaking news updates. I'll have my phone close by just in case of anything going on. Outside of that, we're going to talk a little bit of football. Caleb Williams has, and the rest of the starters for the Bears are not playing in the Hall of Fame game, the first NFL football game that will be taking place in just a couple of days. We'll talk about what that means for the sport of football and it's how disappointing it really is. Obviously, we're going to talk about the trade deadline. We've got a whole segment dedicated to that. And then we're going to talk about some NCAA. The House settlement came out last Friday. We didn't have time to talk about it. We're going to shove it in here. We're going to talk a little bit about what that means for the future of college football. We've talked a lot about hypotheticals of what might happen. We're starting to get some real details. We will talk a little bit about that as well before breaking down the Detroit Lions in our continuing series to go over every single NFL team. Today, the Detroit Lions are up. But we're going to start off with Caleb Williams and the Bears here in the NFL before we get to the trade deadline. But before we do, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to GSMCPodcast.net. Leave a tip or donation with a message in it. That message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful deadline Tuesday. But we are going to get into the NFL before the MLB deadline. Give some time for trades to start cooking. I know we had a couple right before our show went live, but we're going to start off in the NFL here today. One of the big stories coming out of today in the NFL is the fact that Caleb Williams, number 1 overall pick for the Chicago Bears, heir apparent to that franchise, is officially not playing in the Hall of Fame game. The Hall of Fame game, for those who are unaware, is the first NFL preseason game. It takes place in Canton, Ohio, right next to the Hall of Fame. You have just a couple teams. It's just a preseason game there. But, and it's not super exciting all the time. But this was one of these games. You get the Bears. You get the Bears with Caleb Williams, first game of the NFL, able to kick it off with a bang. And now him and a lot of the starters are not playing. And that absolutely stings a little bit. You want to talk all about some hype to get the NFL season kicked off, to get football going again. If that isn't one of those, I have no idea what it is. They'd be taking on the Texans. You get a really nice matchup there. And obviously, I don't expect him to play the whole time. But it'd be really cool to see Caleb Williams out there, get some preseason action, get him on an NFL team, get some NFL action in him. And we know the preseason's different than the regular season, right? He's still going to play in the preseason. The Bears have said that they expect him to get that 45 to 55 reps of live game preseason action. So we won't see him in the Hall of Fame game. And really, as much as it sucks, it's not that big of a surprise. The Hall of Fame game and really the entirety of the preseason has become less and less important as time goes on. I know a lot of players don't love playing in the Hall of Fame game because it's so much earlier than everything else. But it's just the signaling of the start of the new NFL year. You kind of get that starting gun going off. As much as all 32 teams reporting to training camp was, you get your first action and you get your toes wet and you're ready for the NFL season to keep on going. So that's really what the Hall of Fame game is. And Tyson Bagent is going to be out there. We've seen some flashes from him, from him when he came in and played a little bit from the Bears. He was a rookie last year, the second-year guy, looking to cement, his role as the backup to Caleb Williams there on the Bears. I just want to see how this Bears offense is really, because this is a Bears team that could be really good when you look at, all the offseason additions they made. Obviously, Caleb Williams being one of the big ones, Rome Odunze in that same draft as well, pairing him up with Keenan Allen traded for from the Chargers. You traded for DJ Moore last season. You have, new running back in DeAndre Swift. The offensive line is improving. The defense, you made some big improvements over there, extending some of your important guys. This is a Bears team that could be really good. Has the potential, has a lot of pieces that just need to click in, and I'm very excited to see this Bears team. There hasn't been a lot of excitement out of the city of Chicago as far as NFL football goes for a long time, and they famously haven't had a great quarterback ever. Probably their best one is Jay Cutler, but I mean, it's not really a very high bar there, So it is a little disappointing that Caleb Williams is not playing in this Hall of Fame game, but that doesn't mean much really at the end of the day. I'm just excited to get NFL football back on Thursday. I believe we'll have some Hall of Fame inductions as well over the weekend, so it's a big moment for the NFL. We're here, and we're ready to go. We got like 40 days, less than 40 days to go in this season. Very, very exciting. But we're going to take a quick break here, and then we're going to get into some MLB trade deadline stuff. All right, we're going to talk about some of the major trades that just happened, including the Marlins trading a couple of big pieces. Tanner Scott to the Padres, as well as trading Luzardo to the Orioles. They got some big returns there. We're going to talk all about that and more, some of the other big moves that happened in the last 24 hours or so, as well as anything else that breaks on this very special trade deadline Tuesday. Just 52 minutes to go until this trade deadline is up. We're here keeping you up to date on everything that is breaking around the MLB. So after this quick break, we'll be right back here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. Everybody in the world, please Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Please Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I'll make this every day and I'm impatient. Hoping one day I blow up in the basement. Statement. The top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing. Sold out over 1,000 faces. Hey, smiles hitting my way into be put down. Hitting your place, I'll get myself. I want that shit, I don't get it right now. I'm losing it, the losing fits, I'm losing shit. A stupid myth. You choose to live, but choose to dip. You choose to fight, and lose your grip, and lose a gift. Oh. Feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world? Please Lord, give me a sign, a sign. Feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world? Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you are just tuning in, we just did a quick story here on Caleb Williams and the Bears, sitting him and the starters for the Hall of Fame game, the first NFL action of the 2024-2025 season, officially taking place on Thursday. The Bears will sit their starters. That's pretty normal, honestly, but we do have a trade deadline in the MLB to keep you updated on. There have been a bunch of massive trades, just in the last hour. The Marlins are making moves. I have loved what the Marlins have done. We'll talk about what they did today, and then tomorrow we'll probably put them in my winners section, unless anything crazy happens, though. We'll do winners and losers tomorrow once everything's done and the dust have settled. But before we get into these brand new deals, remember, If you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to GSMCPodcast.net. Leave a tip or donation with a message in it. That message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go and throw that in the comments, throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate every single one of you guys for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Tuesday trade deadline afternoon. But like I was saying, we are going to get into some of that trade deadline talk, starting with the Orioles, who have been busy dealing pitchers today. The most recent trade that they made, sending Tanner Scott to the Padres. The Padres, who, are always big swingers in these free agency, are always big swingers in these trade deadline periods, at least recently. They go and they get Tanner Scott, who's one of the best relievers left on the market, one of the best closers out there. They give up quite the haul to get him. We're talking about 4 prospects. They give up pitcher Robbie Snelling, pitcher Adam Mazur, and 2 infielders, Graham Pauley and Jay Bashirs. A couple of those guys you might have heard of before. Adam Mauser, Jay Bashirs. These are not, top prospects, but that is a lot to give up for Tanner Scott. Now, Tanner Scott, and the reason I say it's a lot to give up is not because Tanner Scott is bad. It's because Tanner Scott doesn't have any years of control past this year. They're giving up 4 prospects for a great closer. I mean, looking at his numbers, 1.18 ERA, holding batters to a 127 batting average this season in 17. He hasn't allowed a run in 17 straight starts. That is insane. He recently did a non-consecutive no-hitter, or perfect game, where, he had 27 straight outs. That is insane. That is not easy to do. That never happens. Over his last 2 seasons, he's got the lowest ERA of any pitcher, 1.89. He's a great closer. The Padres are getting a great back-end guy, something that they desperately needed. Adding that to the pen is just a lot to give up. And like I said, I think the Marlins have been, doing a really, really good job as far as replenishing their farm system. This is a lost season. They've already made a trade with the Padres before Luis Arias early on in the season, so why not one-stop shop for the Padres at that down in Miami, right? But they also made another trade, another big trade the Marlins made, this time with the Orioles. They send starting pitcher they send a starting pitcher over, something that they desperately needed. We're talking a team that doesn't really have a lot of holes outside of starting pitching, but they send Trevor Rogers over to the O's in exchange for 2 almost MLB ready prospects. We're talking about, this is a trade that I thought the O's overpaid quite a lot for. I'm not a big fan of this trade, to be completely honest with you. I really thought the Orioles would be able to hold on to it. Trevor Rogers is a great pitcher, right? And he's going to be huge for the Marlins to go out. For the O's when they're trying to chase a title. Adding him and Eflin to that starting rotation is really important after losing Bradish and John Means. This is a team that desperately needed that help, but it's just so much. I really, really think they could have gotten. I know Eric Fetty went. To the Cardinals yesterday for a lot as well in a 3-team trade, but I feel like they could have gotten a guy like that for that kind of package, who honestly I like a little bit more than Rogers. At least this season he comes with a little more control. But I do really like what the Marlins are doing. I love this system that they're building down there in Miami. Lil Fettuccini asks, what are the chances of the Seattle Mariners making the playoffs this year? I want to say high. I want to believe in this team. I really like the move for Randy Arozarena. It's paying immediate dividends. It's working. They have they have one of the best pitching staffs in the league. They've added some great bullpen help this deadline. They just needs the bats to go. The pickup of Victor Robles, whatever Seattle did that Washington wasn't doing, it's turned him into a hitter somehow. If they can get Julio Rodriguez back and he can, bring his bat back to, the MVP-esque level that he was at before, this is a Mariners team that can make a run. It's very concerning how bad the bats have been. They obviously just DFA/trade Ty France over there to the Reds. This is a team that has a lot of talent, and we've seen it. They obviously had that huge lead in the division, which they've now squandered and given up. If their bats are able to get going, they are a playoff team, no doubt in my mind. But the way it's going right now, I'm a little less certain to say that they're going to make the playoffs. We talk about a wild card race that is incredibly close right now, even in the AL. I mean, Boston is nipping there. You have the Mariners who, while they're not, you know, while they're not in the wild card, they've got a chance. They're only 2.5 games out. The Yankees, they're gonna make the playoffs. They got a 5.5 game lead. Excuse me, 4.5 on the Twins, who are second. 5.5 on the Royals, who are third. Like I said, Boston is in that mix. The Rays have made a lot of interesting moves. I feel like they're gonna start to fall, but with how the Rays have been, they'll figure out a way to keep going, right? But I don't really see a way, unless the bats really get going, that Seattle makes the playoffs. And like I said, I want to say yes. I want to believe in this Seattle team. It's just a tough, tough competition in the AL, and I think, and for a wild card, really, I think their best chance is staying with the Astros in the division, which I think they might be able to do. Obviously, right now they're still tied in that division. The Rangers are making up ground, closing quickly, 3.5 games out of both of them. But the way that Houston's playing, they've been playing better. They've been an improving team, while Seattle's been a declining team. So unless something changes, I don't think they're going to make the playoffs. I think their best shot is the division outside of the wild card, though, and I'm not going to rule it out 100%. But I I'm going to give them let's give them a number here. I'm going to give them like a 40% chance to make the playoffs. You know, not guaranteed, but they've definitely got a good shot at it. Outside of that, there are still a lot of other deadline moves. We talk about, so we'll just stay in the AL here. Cleveland just made a big move, not something that they usually do. They go ahead and get Lane Thomas from the Washington Nationals, giving up 3 prospects, 3 top 30 guys, including their number 8 overall prospect pitcher to the Nats. It's an overpay, and I feel like, and maybe it's just me, if you guys feel differently, feel free to let me know, but I feel like this is a lot of overpayments happening. There hasn't been too many trades where I've been like, yeah, that makes sense. I feel like in almost every trade, the prospects being given back are a lot, especially for these relievers that we've seen, and we've seen a lot of high-priced relievers go. There is there's an insane amount of relievers that have been going for the price that they've been going at, which that's one of those things that I don't quite understand. But this is the time you have to be aggressive, right? The Mets are adding. They went out and got Paul Blackburn. Josh Bell was moved at the deadline yet again. He gets moved over to the D-backs, adding a bat that they need. Again, the Marlins are The Marlins are, I really like their deadline. They might have my favorite deadline. They've done really, really good with what they have. Now, that does involve trading everybody away again. Second time in within 10 years that they've traded everyone that they've had to continue to be kind of these perennial disappointing teams. But I do think this is a team that, if some of their prospects can go, they can build something good here. I really do like what the Marlins have done. I think they've had my favorite deadline so far. But like I said, we'll do winners and losers tomorrow. Once all the dust have settled. Josh Bell to the D-backs, I think, is a really good trade. Like I was saying, he's not the same all-star level player that he was with the Nationals or the Pirates back 5 years ago or so. But he's still serviceable. He's a good bat. Christian Walker goes on the injured list. Uh, that's a good replacement bat, a good high level bat to have for situations later on down the line. But like I said, I will keep you updated on any other major trade that gets taken place in the next 39 minutes. That's all we have left on the deadline. I'd like to see, again, as a Nats fan, I'd like to see them make a couple more moves. I'd like to see Kyle Finnegan get moved, especially with how much the reliever market's been going. Him, Dylan Floro, I'd like to see get moved, as well as, I want to see if the White Sox will be able to get a deal done for Luis Robert. Doesn't sound like Garrett Crochet is getting traded. He seems like he's, I guess, a long-term plan or a long-term piece for the White Sox, but I'm very excited to see where the rest of these trade deadline goes. Again, 39 minutes, just 39 minutes to get your trades in. We will take you right up to the deadline this year. I'm very excited to go ahead and do that with you. But we're going to move on to our next segment. Take a quick break from baseball outside of any breaking news, which I will update you on. We're going to talk about the NCAA house settlement that has to do with college football. A lot has been going on in college football recently, whether that be, conference realignment, NIL deals, the new video game. We'll talk about all of that, how that's going to affect the future of college football, and more, coming up next here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube, absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you were just tuning in just 36 minutes from now, so any major updates, we will give that to you. In this segment, though, we're going to take a look at the NCAA house settlement. The college football, the world of it is changing drastically. This is the most amount of change that we have seen ever in this sport. It is fundamentally shaking it from its core. We're going to talk about all of the details that are starting to come out and what the future might look like for college football. But before we get into that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Leave a tip or donation with the message in it. That message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go and throw that in the comments, throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate every single one of you guys for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Tuesday MLB trade deadline afternoon. But like I was saying, we are going to get into the NCAA house settlement. All this information came out on Friday, so we are getting a little bit late to it. So if you've heard this information before, I apologize, but we're going to set a little bit of a baseline for all you guys. Little baseline for you here. Obviously, this comes off of a court decision. The NCAA is not very good at changing things outside of losing lawsuits. But the gist of it is, hey, college athletes are going to be paid, and this is how. There are still a couple of things to be ironed out. It's a $2.78 billion pool for damages. Players are going to be paid starting next season as long as there's no hiccups. And the way that it's going to work, Schools are going to get $23 million, 22.1, I think is the actual number, million dollars to work with. They can spread that out as much as they want. There's, as far as it says right now, there's no specific outline for how they have to spread out that money. That's just like the salary cap right there. You don't have to hit it. All you have to do is go to the is you can use that much money in your cap. Real quick before we continue this, we have some breaking news. Like I was saying, the trade deadline is coming up. We have a breaking trade. Jeff Passan reporting the Pittsburgh Pirates are finalizing a deal to acquire super utility man Isaiah Kiner-Falefa from the Toronto Blue Jays. We don't yet have the return on that. That is an interesting move. The Pirates obviously, the Pirates obviously are right on the fringe of being playoff contenders. I didn't think they'd add. They didn't necessarily sell either. They made some kind of lateral moves, some young players for young players. We're closer to sellers than buyers this season. But with the emergence of a pitcher like Paul Skeens, I was curious what they were going to do. Currently, Pittsburgh sits 2 games back of the wild card, tied with the Cardinals, who are also in that same position. The Cardinals who are going after it, trying to make a push. This isn't a trade that makes too much of a difference. I do think that this is just kind of playing with salaries, trying to make some moves work. He's a higher upside guy more than anywhere. You can play him anywhere if you have a struggling guy. Play him at third, play him at catcher, play him at outfield. He can do just about anything for you. So I do not mind this move. Again, it'll depend on compensation, which I haven't seen yet. But Kiner-Falefa is now a Pirate as the Blue Jays continue to sell. I hope they commit to this. I really hope they go full sell. I doubt they're going to, though. But back to the NCAA house settlement. Excuse me. Just like I said, more interruptions here. We got more breaking news here. Breaking news, the Pirates again active, getting Brian De La Cruz from the Marlins, this time giving up prospect Jun Seok Shim. Again, getting some bats. The Pirates need bats badly. Marlins, again, getting some prospects, refilling that pitcher pool that they've kind of run dry a little bit, building one of the more exciting young arm barns in the league. Win for both sides, I would say. Again, I really like what the Marlins have done at this deadline. But back to the NCAA house settlement. Sorry to keep getting distracted like this. The NCAA will continue. Again, the players have the option to opt out of this, and they'll have a whole year to do this, basically. And the way that that's going to work, and I think this is the most important or most interesting part to me. I won't say most important. If they choose to opt out, they're not saying no to the money. They're saying no to some of it. They're just not waiving their rights to sue the NCAA, right? If they choose to accept the settlement, the players are never allowed to sue the NCAA ever again. And I think that might be a little far. I know that's one of those spots that is a little icky to me. It's just so they don't do the same lawsuit again, double jeopardy style. But it's just one of those things that I don't really love. Another thing that we don't really know is how Title IX is going to affect this. Title IX, a very important bill passed in the 1980s or 90s there. I'm sorry, I forget when it was passed. But basically it says you have to fund men's and women's sports equally. You have to fund men's and women's stuff equally, basically. And with this now being a thing, it's unclear what of the $23.1 million, if that is going to be under Title IX. Obviously, football makes the most money. You can't expect $11 million to go to football, and then $11 million to go to women's programs as well. Because schools have the discretion of how to use this quote unquote salary cap that they now have as a part of their, excuse me, that they now have as a part of their, I guess, athletics budget. It's it's one of those things that could get murky. Again, there's still stuff being hammered out here. Some people say sport by sport. I think that's probably the best way to do it. Get the highest revenue generating sports, the biggest chunk of the pie there. Say, hey, football generates 75% of your budget. You can use 75% of your cap on football. But then that also leaves out a lot of money for the non revenue generating sports. The Olympic sports, your swimming, your golf, your tennis, your any other team, your track and field team, stuff like that aren't making money for your school. And that's what I'm a little worried about. And there's no great way to do it. There's no super equal equality way to do it, because a lot of this money is going to go to football and to basketball, because those are the highest publicity sports. Those are the ones where that kind of recruiting is going to make the biggest difference. But we will see. We'll see how that goes. This is going to fundamentally change the way that college football is. Like I said, and like a lot of people are aware, excuse me, I apologize. Like a lot of people are aware, the NCAA was kind of built on this idea of amateurism. And now it's kind of shaken to its core. We're down to that's not a thing anymore. You're paying your athletes. That's what this is. And I'm very excited for the future of it. I feel like getting some kind of groundwork like this is very, very important. Along with the new NCAA video game that came out just a couple of weeks ago, you're getting more attention on these college players, getting them, the ability to go out and sign these contracts. And I think that's the big thing, not being penalized if you go do like a car sales ad, there is a silver lining, and I've talked about this a lot when this suit was settled originally. It kind of comes down to, I want these players to get paid. I think they deserve to get paid. As far as schools paying them directly, which is what this is turning out to be, I'm a little less gung-ho on that. I want them to be able to get paid, go get sponsorships. Like I said, go do that ad for the cars. Go do that Kool-Aid ad, Go do whatever if companies are willing to pay you. But I just think it's a little different when another team, when your college is paying you. And I guess it's not that big of a difference, but it's one of those things that is a huge, huge shift, and it could lead to a lot of exploitation, I would say. Especially with the transfer portal as well. It goes both ways, but I'm excited to see how this affects it, because this could be really good for college football and the athletes. It's kind of making it a little more of a professional kind of situation, and college football especially. But anyway, in the next segment, we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to get into our predictions for the Lions. We've done almost the entirety of the NFC. We did the Vikings yesterday. We're working our way through the NFC North right now. We're going to do a review of all of their off-season moves, everything that they did, what grade I would give them, and then we're going to go through their schedule, give them predictions, a record, what the Lions will do in the 2024-2025 NFL season, as well as keep you updated on this very special Trade Deadline Tuesday. So we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you're just tuning in, we just went over the NCAA House settlement a little bit, talking about how that might affect the future of college football. We also talked about Caleb Williams and the Bears sitting all their starters for the Hall of Fame game, the first NFL action that is going to be taking place on Thursday, just 2 days from now, as well as doing some trade deadline updates, as the deadline for the MLB, the trade deadline for the MLB is just 24 minutes away. It is right around the corner. We are taking you live right up and through it, giving you all of the updates with every single trade that gets broken here in the next 23 minutes or so. But before we get into the Detroit Lions, their offseason, their schedule prediction, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to GSMCPodcast.net. Leave a tip or donation with a message in it. That message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody for tuning in, talking some sports with me here, on a very special trade deadline, July 30th. But like I was saying, we're going to finish off our show here with the Detroit Lions, continuing our series. We'll talk a little bit about them and the theme for the Lions this offseason, their offseason review, if you will, has been re-signing players. And I love that. We talked a little bit about the Buccaneers, who kind of did the same thing. They're taking care of their guys here in Detroit. Obviously, signing Jared Goff to a massive new extension. Signing Amon-Ra St. Brown to a massive new extension. Penei Sewell to a massive new extension. Tyler Decker to a massive new extension just a couple of days ago. That is 4 centerpieces of this Lions organization that they have now extended, taken care of before going out and, dealing with the rest of the team. Now, what they did with the rest of the team, I also love. Their defense was an issue. Now, it got a lot better down the stretch of the season, but for a large majority of the season there, the Lions defense excuse me. The Lions defense was bad. Just put it light. The Lions defense was bad. What they did to go and fix that is go and get some run defense help with maybe the best run stopping player in the NFL, DJ Reader, big boy from formerly of the Cincinnati Bengals, comes up and joins the Lions to stop any kind of run attack against them. The corner problem, they had some issues. They brought in Amik Robertson. They traded for Carlton Davis, who I love that trade for them. And in their draft, they hit that position hard, bringing in Terrion Arnold and Ennis Rakestraw Jr. Both of those I had first-round grades on. They get Ennis Rakestraw in the second. Terrion Arnold was maybe my favorite corner in the entire draft, as well as fixing the pass rush outside of Aiden Hutchinson. Now they bring in Marcus Davenport, a little bit older veteran from the Saints over here. He comes in. This is a much better Lions defense just from adding them. I mean, going down their starting lineup, right? You've got, obviously, Aiden Hutchinson, DJ Reader now, Marcus Davenport, Jack Campbell, rookie from last year, in his linebacking core with Alex Anzalone and Derek Barnes. The corners, it looks so much better than it did last season, right? You go from you go from just about nothing to Carlton Davis, Brian Branch, Kirby Joseph, Terrion Arnold, Ennis Rakestraw, Amik Robertson. That is a great secondary all of a sudden. And they did all of this in one season, a season where they, even with a weaker defense, even with a weaker, secondary, they were able to make the NFC Championship game, be a big in the NFC Championship game. And if a couple of plays might have bounced the other direction, they're in the Super Bowl last season. This is a Lions team that's really, really good. This is a Lions team that very much improved over their offseason. It might be my favorite offseason out of every single offseason in the NFL. I know that's a lot to say, but this is a really, really good Lions team. Obviously, the big question was Jared Goff, and that might have been the one mistake that they made, in my opinion. Extending all those other guys, bringing in everyone else that they brought in, yeah, fine. I like it. I love it for some of these. But at the same time, Jared Goff is a quarterback you're now paying over $50 million. And, he's up there. He's making $53 million a year, the fourth, fifth, sixth highest paid quarter. I guess there's been so many quarterback contracts this season. Behind all three guys making 55, Trevor Lawrence, Jordan Love now, Joe Burrow, as well as Tua, surpassing him by $0.1 million per year. He's the fifth highest paid quarterback in the league right now. That's a little bit of an overpay for Jared Goff. Now, I understand this contract is starting to look better already, which is kind of crazy. But Jared Goff, we've seen when the offensive line falls apart, which I'm not saying this offensive line is falling apart. It was one of the best in football last year, and they did a great job keeping it together. Obviously, Penei Sewell, they give that big contract to. Taylor Decker, they give that big contract to. Both of their tackles are locked up. Center Frank Ragnow is insane, paired with two great guards in Kevin Zeitler and Graham Glasgow. That is a star-studded offensive line, as much as a star-studded offensive line can be. So there's not a lot of reason in this current structure that the Lions should be worried about Jared Goff, but I do get worried a couple years from now when this roster gets too expensive to keep up that interior line play, if Jared Goff will be able to be the same. Because, especially those interior guys, they're getting older. Their contracts are starting to run thin. You've got a smaller Super Bowl window than you might think. Super Bowl windows are always smaller than you think, and especially in the state the NFC is in right now, you have to take advantage of it. You have to take advantage of it. Real quick, before we continue, we have another trade breaking in the MLB. Jeff Passan reporting the Baltimore Orioles busy as well. They've had a pretty good trade deadline. They're finalizing a deal to acquire Chicago White Sox outfielder Eloy Jimenez. This is interesting. It's not the big name outfielder in Luis Robert, but, Eloy Jimenez, when he's healthy, was really good just a couple of seasons ago. And Baltimore's bats have been struggling recently, not enough to really be a big cause of concern, but it's a nice little addition, a nice little bench bat to add for the O's. Maybe he can come in and slot on off day for Anthony Santander or Cedric Mullins or something. He can come in and be an off day player, come in and play DH as well for them. This is a good move for the Orioles. I like what they've done as well. The Phillies, the Orioles, and the Marlins have all been really good this trade deadline, I think. But getting back to the Detroit Lions here. Excuse me. The Detroit Lions, again, I really, really like their offseason. They've hit every need that they needed to. Their draft was really good, getting those corners, Terrion Arnold and Ennis Rakestraw Jr. If they can stay healthy again, that's how all of these predictions are. If they can stay healthy, right? That's what we're running off of. This team is going to be great. This is a team that, and we'll do a whole record prediction coming up next, actually. But this is a team that is Super Bowl contenders. This is a team that has Super Bowl, Super Bowl aspirations. The goal of this team is a Super Bowl. Amon-Ra St. Brown said that himself. Vegas has set the line for their wins at 10.5. I will tell you what I have them at, and we'll break down every single game. You tell me what you agree with and what you don't. That's coming up next, as well as any other updates as the MLB trade deadline ends in just 14 minutes. We'll take you up and through it. So stick around for that. We'll be right back here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you're just tuning in, we just went over the Detroit Lions offseason, as well as giving you some more breaking news as the MLB trade deadline is just 12 minutes away. Any other moves have to come in quickly. We'll keep you updated on that. But I gave the Detroit Lions an A. I forgot if I said it or not. I given them an A for their offseason. I love what they did. They upgraded at every position of need, and this was a team that was this close to the Super Bowl last year. So we'll talk a little bit about their schedule, but before we do, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the team of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Leave a tip or donation with a message in it. That message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to add, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate all of you guys for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Tuesday afternoon. But like I was saying, we are doing the Detroit Lions schedule today, giving them a record going game by game. Vegas has the Detroit Lions win total currently set at 10.5. And this is not a super hard schedule either, right? They have a couple of tough games in there. You know, they have to play the 49ers near the end of the season. They have to play the Packers twice. They have to play the Cowboys, the Texans, but they have to play the Bills. But outside of just a couple of games, this is a schedule that I could see them absolutely dominating. And that starts off early. They've got a nice little stretch here against the Rams, Bucks, Cardinals, and Seahawks to start off the season before having an early bye, a Week 5 bye, and that could potentially hurt them down the stretch in case, they get in any kind of division races, they get in any kind of seeding race with a team that might have a later bye. They just might run out of steam down the road. But the Lions come out. I love this Lions team. They have a lot of chemistry, continuity. They start off hot, winning their first 4 games through the bye, beating the Rams, the Bucks, the Cardinals, and the Seahawks. I think the Rams might make it a contest, but especially week 1, I just like the continuity with the Lions a little better. Obviously, this is a revenge game for the Rams. This was a matchup of the wild card playoff round last year. So we'll see if they come out with a little extra tenacity, the Rams do. But I'm taking the Lions to sweep the first 4 games. Start off 4-0. Start off hot. Why don't you? Best team in the league. Best record you can possibly have. First 4 games, 4-0. Take a bye week as you prepare for the Cowboys in Jerry World. A tough contest. Obviously, they had that heartbreaking loss last season where they went for 2-3 times. One of them counted, but there was an odd penalty called. I have the Lions taking their revenge here against a Cowboys unit that might have gotten a little better defensively, but offensively, I think they are a lot more diminished. So I'm taking this Lions team to start 5-0. 5-0 for the Lions. Kind of shocking there. Then they take on the division rival, the Vikings. That is up in Minnesota. I'm going to give the Lions a loss here. They've been riding high. 5 straight wins. The wheels are going to fall off a couple of times, obviously, and I think the Vikings will take 1 game from them early in this season. It's not the end of the world, though. Obviously, the Lions are 5-1 after 7 weeks. Then Tennessee. They have Tennessee come into them in Detroit, and the Titans are not the same level as a lot of these other teams that they're playing. I'm giving this win to the Lions. Halfway through the season here, after 8 weeks, the Lions are just 6-1 with that bye week. They are cruising through the NFC right now, but this is where the schedule gets a little harder. The last half of the season, you get the Packers, Texans, Jaguars, Colts, Bears, Packers, Bills, Bears, Niners, Vikings. So you're getting you're getting a bunch of playoff teams from last year, a whole bunch of games against previous playoff teams, 5 of them in their last 9. And, the Jaguars are right there. The Bears are much improved. This is a very hard stretch of schedule down the line. But starts off against the Packers. That is in Lambeau. I'm going to give the Packers the win here. In Lambeau, they just signed Jordan Love to a big contract. They've got playoff aspirations. I'm giving the Packers a win here. Then they traveled down to Houston, a tough game against CJ Stroud and the Texans. I think the Texans will pull this one out. They drop 2 in a row, the Lions do, fall to 6-3 after 10 weeks. In week 11, they get back, welcome the Jaguars home after a little bit of a road stretch there. Trevor Lawrence and the Jaguars aren't enough, and the Lions take care of business in one of the classic cat games there, improving their record to 7-3 through 11 weeks. The Colts in week 12. Now, I know we just gave them a win against the Jaguars, and I don't think the Colts are as good, but the Colts are a scrappy team and are good for a surprise win out of nowhere basically once a year. So I'm giving the Colts this win. Not to say that the Colts are that bad, but I do think that this is a Colts team that can surprise some people. So I'm giving the Colts a win here against the Lions. Next week, they got a little bit of a homestand here. 3 straight home games. They enter week 13, only losing 4 games so far on the season. So, through 12 weeks, they're 7-4. A pretty good position to be in. They've kind of slowed down as of recent, but take on the Bears. That's going to be a win. We talked about Caleb Williams and the Bears. I like what they did this offseason. It's not enough for me. I'm going to keep the Bears down here. The Lions get a win there. Then they get revenge against the Packers. After 14 weeks, the Packers come to Detroit. The Packers take care of business there. That was just the White Sox there. But the Packers lose a game to the Lions here. And now the Lions, after week 14, are kind of cruising. After 14 weeks, they're 9-4. It's not the easiest schedule down the stretch. The last 4 games, 9-4, need to basically go undefeated to secure that 1 seed. Now, it's not impossible for them to secure the 1 seed, but the Niners, who I had winning 13 games, are one game better than them at this point in the season. Now, they do have a big game with the Lions later. The Niners do. So that is that's something that's a big game to circle. And real quick before we finish it, we have some breaking news. Jack Flaherty is being sent to the Dodgers from the Tigers. That is huge. The Dodgers need more starting pitching. Jack Flaherty is one of the best starters that was out there on the market from the Tigers. He's had a really resurgent season this year. The Dodgers acquire a good one again. I bet you there was a pretty good return for him. Eric Fetty kind of return. A little better than that, maybe even. We'll have to see. I'll let you know if the return comes. Just 4 minutes to deadline time now, though. So we are on the clock. We might see a flurry of trades start to come in. But we're sitting here again. 4 weeks left in the season. The Lions sitting at 9-4. Bills are up next at home, finishing off their long homestand, 3 straight games at home. The Bills come into town. They've played a lot of games in Detroit. Obviously, last season they had to come in there a couple times when their stadium was snowed out. The Bills take care of business. I'm gonna give Josh Allen and the Bills a win here. They fall to 9-5. 3 more games to go. They bounce back on the road against the Bears in Chicago. I think they're just a better team than the Bears, really. 10-5, and then the big game with the 49ers. Currently, the Lions are 10-5. If my model is 100% accurate, which, yeah, of course it's 100% accurate, right? And at this point, heading into week 17, the 49ers are 12-3. So, if the Niners lose out, the Lions win out, especially with this tiebreaker, they get that 1 seed. These are very important games, and I'm giving this game to the Lions here. I think the Lions will be able to pull out a big game against the Niners, and then it comes down to Week 18 against the Vikings and Week 18 against the Cardinals for the Niners. Both of these teams will be trying. The winner of this game, if the Lions win and the Niners lose, they get the 1 seed and the bye. If the Niners win, they get the bye. These games will probably be played together, if I had to guess, so neither team could rest their starters. I think both of these teams win. I have the Lions finishing with a record of 12-5, getting the 2nd seed in the NFC for the 2nd year in a row, looking to oust the reigning NFC champions, the San Francisco 49ers. This is going to be a really fun season for the Lions fans. I really love what they did. It's gonna be fun. It's always good when it's good when the Lions are good, right? They finally get to be good. It's always exciting. But I'm giving the Lions a 12-5 season this year. Let me know what you think. Before we sign off, though, we just had another trade. I'll take you through the deadline here. The Dodgers are also acquiring center fielder Kevin Kiermaier from the Blue Jays. Again, more bats out there for them. Kevin Kiermaier is one of the best defenders in the league, or at least he was. He has that kind of range. If they can play him out there in center with their bats that honestly have been struggling a little bit, this is a good trade. I also really like what the Dodgers have done. Just 1 minute left on the trade deadline. We'll see if we get one more here. We'll wait on that, but thank you, everybody, so much for tuning in to this very special trade deadline episode of Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I have been your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Come back tomorrow. We'll do winners and losers of the deadline. I'll have a full breakdown of every single one. You've had a little bit of my thoughts here today. You can kind of guess what some of my winners might be, but we'll talk about that and all of that and more, as well as another NFC North team, probably the Packers tomorrow. But if you would prefer the Bears, go ahead and let me know right now, and I can go ahead and plan for that. But we have officially hit the MLB trade deadline. No more new trades. That is it. That is final. The White Sox hold on to both Garrett Crochet and Luis Robert. Interesting. That is a really, really interesting move by the White Sox. We'll talk about all of that and more tomorrow. So thank you so much for tuning in. I'll see you same time, same place with some more trade deadline winners and losers tomorrow. You all have a good one. I will see you then. Bye-bye.
Let's go. I'm gonna feel like it's gonna be a bad day. And the coffee ain't hit yet, damn ain't that